The car door slammed. I watched through the frosted window as my son backed out of my driveway without a second glance. Christmas was 3 weeks away. I stood there in my kitchen in Calgary, the one I'd lived in for 40 years, and realized I'd just been uninvited from Christmas. Not by my son Michael directly. He didn't have the spine for that. No, it was my daughter-in-law Jessica who delivered the message, her voice dripping with that particular brand of passive aggression she'd perfected over the years. Thomas, we've decided to keep it small this year. Just immediate family. You understand, right? I'm his father. How much more immediate could I get? But I didn't say that. I'd learned over the past 5 years, since my wife Patricia passed, that arguing with Jessica was like trying to reason with a brick wall. A brick wall that somehow always made me look like the unreasonable one. Sure, I'd said. I understand. The thing that hurt most? Michael just stood there, looking at his shoes like a scolded teenager. My boy, who I'd raised to stand up for what's right, couldn't even stand up for his own father. After they left, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Patricia and I had shared 39 years of breakfasts, and made a decision. I wasn't going to sit here on Christmas Day feeling sorry for myself. I wasn't going to call Michael and beg. I wasn't going to let Jessica see that her dismissal had landed. I pulled out my phone and called the Meadowbrook Community Center. I'd driven past it 100 times, seen the signs about volunteers needed, but never stopped. Patricia had always organized our holidays. After she died, the kids took over. Well, one of them did. Hello, Meadowbrook Center. This is Carol speaking. Her voice was warm, friendly, professional, but with a genuine kindness that reminded me of Patricia. Hi, yes. I saw you're looking for volunteers? For Christmas Day? Oh, wonderful. Yes, we are. We run a Christmas dinner for folks who don't have anywhere else to go. Are you interested in helping? I paused. Was I one of those folks now? Someone with nowhere to go on Christmas? Yes, I said. I'd like to help. That's how it started. Over the next 3 weeks, I went to Meadowbrook twice a week to help prepare. The center served the community in various ways: hot meals, recreation programs, support services. Carol ran the volunteer program with the kind of efficiency that would have made a fire chief proud. She was about my age, maybe a few years younger, with silver hair she wore in a practical ponytail and laugh lines that suggested she smiled often. We didn't talk much at first, just worked, sorting donations, setting up tables, organizing the meal planning. But there was something comfortable about working alongside her. No judgment, no questions about why a man my age was spending his pre-Christmas time at a community center instead of with family. It was the second week when Harold walked in. I was hauling boxes of canned goods from the storage room when this tall, distinguished-looking man in an expensive wool coat entered through the main doors. He had that bearing, the type like he'd spent his life making important decisions and having people listen. Thomas, Carol called out, come meet Harold. He's one of our major donors. Harold, this is Thomas. He's been an absolute godsend these past couple weeks. Harold shook my hand with a firm grip. Retired? Firefighter. 35 years. You? Built a commercial construction company. Sold it 5 years ago. Now I try to figure out what to do with too much money and too much time. I liked him immediately. No pretense. No false modesty, but no arrogance either. Thomas is volunteering on Christmas Day, Carol mentioned. Something flickered across Harold's face. Understanding, maybe. Same, he said. Lost my wife 2 years ago. Kids are in Toronto. Figured I'd rather be useful than sit in that big empty house. That's when I knew we'd get along. Over the next week, Harold started showing up when I was there. We'd work, talk about our lives before. He told me about building his company from nothing, the stress, the success, the emptiness, when his wife Ellen died, and he realized he'd spent so many years working that he'd forgotten how to just live. I told him about the fires I'd fought, the people I'd saved, the ones I couldn't, about Patricia and our quiet life together, about Michael, and how watching your son become someone you don't quite recognize is its own kind of grief. We didn't talk about it directly, but I think we both understood. We were two old men trying to figure out what the third act looked like. Christmas week arrived. Michael called on Monday. "Dad, about Christmas." My heart jumped. Maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe he'd stood up to Jessica. "Yeah? Jessica's parents are coming now, so we really don't have room. But we'll see you Boxing Day, okay? We can do our gift exchange then." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Sure, son. Boxing Day." After I hung up, Carol appeared at my elbow. We were decorating the community center hall, and I must have looked as gutted as I felt. "Everything all right, Thomas?" I told her. I don't know why I barely knew her, but it all came out. The years of feeling like I was tolerated rather than wanted. The way Jessica controlled the family schedule like a corporate manager. The feeling that I'd become an obligation, scheduled in when convenient. Carol listened. When I finished, she squeezed my shoulder. "Their loss," she said simply. "Christmas Day, you'll be with people who actually want you here." She was right. Christmas morning, I got up early out of habit. Patricia and I always started our coffee by 6, even on holidays. I sat at my kitchen table, my phone silent, and made myself a full breakfast. Then I drove to Meadowbrook. The place was transformed. Carol and the regular volunteers had turned the community hall into something magical. Lights, decorations, tables set with real tablecloths and proper dishes. Not paper plates, dignity, even in charity. Harold arrived shortly after I did, carrying bags of gifts he'd bought for the kids who'd be coming. We worked all morning. By noon, people started arriving. Families who'd fallen on hard times. Seniors living alone. People experiencing homelessness. A young single mother with 3 kids who looked at the decorated hall like it was Disneyland. And we fed them. A proper Christmas dinner with all the trimmings. Harold had paid for everything, turkey, ham, all the sides, desserts. Must have cost thousands. But he moved through the crowd like it was the most natural thing in the world, talking to everyone, making sure the kids got their gifts. Carol was everywhere at once, coordinating volunteers, making sure every guest felt welcomed. I watched her as I served dinner, noticing the way she remembered everyone's names, asked about their lives, made them feel seen. Around 3 in the afternoon, there was a lull. Most guests were finishing dessert. Carol found me in the kitchen. "You did good today, Thomas." "So did you. You do this every year?" "5th year running. It's become my Christmas tradition." She paused. "After my husband died, I needed something. Sitting at home, feeling sorry for myself, wasn't helping anyone." "How long ago?" 7 years. "Cancer." "It was." "Well, it was awful. But life continues, doesn't it? We can let grief swallow us, or we can find new ways to live." I nodded, understanding completely. "You know," she said, glancing toward the hall where Harold was helping a child open a toy. "Harold and I, we grab dinner sometimes. Just friends, but it's nice. Having people who understand this stage of life. You should join us sometime." "I'd like that." She smiled, and I realized it was the first time all day I'd thought about Michael and Jessica's rejection without feeling that cold hurt in my chest. That evening, after we'd cleaned up and the center was locked, the 3 of us, Carol, Harold, and I, went to a diner that was open on Christmas. We sat in a booth, drank terrible coffee, and talked for hours. About our lives, our losses, our plans. Harold mentioned he was looking at buying a vacation property in the Okanagan. Carol talked about the community garden project she wanted to start at Meadowbrook in the spring. I found myself telling them about my dream of finally learning to woodwork, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for during my career. It was the best Christmas I'd had in years. Boxing Day, Michael and Jessica came over as promised. I'd bought gifts for everyone, including Jessica. I'm not petty. They brought gifts too, though theirs had that last-minute quality, like they'd grabbed them at the drugstore that morning. "So, Dad, what did you do yesterday?" Michael asked, as he settled onto my couch. "Volunteered at the community center. Served Christmas dinner to about 200 people." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "You volunteered? On Christmas Day?" "That's nice, Dad," Michael said quickly, shooting his wife a look. "It was more than nice. It was meaningful. Met some good people. My friend Harold donated everything, must have been 15, $20,000 worth of food and gifts. I watched Jessica's face change. Her interest had been zero when I said volunteered. At friend Harold, it ticked up slightly. At $20,000, I saw the gears start turning. "Harold?" she asked casually. "That's nice of him. Friend from the fire department?" "No. Met him at Meadowbrook. He sold his construction company a few years back. Commercial. Did very well for himself." "Interesting," Jessica said, and I knew that tone. I'd heard it before when she sensed an opportunity. "You should invite him over sometime. We'd love to meet your friends." "I bet you would," I thought. We exchanged gifts. The kids, my grandchildren Sophie and Ethan, were genuinely pleased with what I'd gotten them. Sophie, 15, had asked for art supplies for her growing interest in painting. Ethan, 11, wanted hockey equipment. I'd bought quality stuff, the kind their parents probably wouldn't spring for. Jessica noticed. "Thomas, you really didn't have to spend so much." "They're my grandchildren." Of course I did. After they left, I sat in my living room and realized something. I wasn't sad. I'd expected to feel that familiar ache of being relegated to second-tier family, but instead, I felt free, like I'd glimpsed a different way of living and liked what I'd seen. Carol texted me that evening. "How was Boxing Day?" "Fine. Want to grab coffee this week? Harold and I are getting lunch Thursday at that cafe on 17th. Join us? I'll be there." That's how it became a regular thing. Every week, sometimes twice a week, the three of us would meet up. Sometimes just coffee, sometimes dinner. Harold was looking into investment properties and wanted opinions. Carol was organizing her spring projects and needed volunteers. I found myself looking forward to these meetings more than I'd looked forward to anything in years. And somewhere along the way, I started noticing things about Carol. The way she always ordered decaf after 6 because regular coffee kept her up. How she'd absently tuck a strand of hair behind her ear when she was thinking. The kindness in her eyes when she talked about the people she helped at Meadowbrook. I wasn't looking for romance. Neither was she, I don't think. But sometimes life has other plans. It was February when things shifted. We'd gone to see a movie, some action thing Harold had wanted to watch. Afterward, Harold begged off dinner, claiming he had an early meeting the next day. Carol and I went alone to a Thai restaurant. We talked about everything. About Patricia and her husband Daniel. About how grief never really leaves, but becomes something you carry differently over time. About fears of growing old, alone. About the unexpected joy of finding friendship when you'd resigned yourself to solitude. At the end of the evening, as I walked her to her car in the parking lot, she turned to me. "Thomas, I need to say something." My heart started pounding. I felt like a teenager. "I really enjoy spending time with you. And I hope it's becoming more than just friendship. But if I'm misreading things, please tell me now before I make a complete fool of myself." I laughed, partly from relief, partly from joy. "You're not misreading anything. I've been trying to figure out how to say the same thing for weeks." She smiled. That wonderful warm smile. "So what do we do now? How about dinner next week? Just the two of us?" "I'd love that." We started dating, if that's what you call it when you're in your 60s. It felt both familiar and entirely new. Carol had her own life, her own interests, her own friends. She wasn't looking for someone to complete her or save her. She'd already saved herself. We were just two people who'd found unexpected companionship. Harold was delighted. "About time," he said when I told him. "You two have been dancing around each other for months." By April, we were spending most weekends together. She'd come to my place, or I'd go to hers. We'd cook together, watch movies, take long walks along the Bow River. I started my woodworking classes, and she'd come watch me fumble through basic joints, offering encouragement and gentle teasing in equal measure. My relationship with my son remained cordial. We'd see each other every few weeks. I'd learned to keep things surface level. How was work? How were the kids? Everything fine with the house? I stopped expecting more. Then one day, in May, my phone rang. Jessica. In 5 years, Jessica had never called me directly. Everything went through Michael. "Thomas. Hi. How are you?" "I'm well, Jessica. Everything okay?" "Oh, yes. Everything's fine. Listen, Michael and I were talking, and we feel terrible about how things have been. We've been so busy, and we've neglected you. We'd love to have you over for dinner this weekend. A proper family dinner. And please, bring your friend Harold. We'd love to meet him." There it was. I should have seen it coming. "Harold's busy this weekend," I lied, "but I appreciate the invitation." "Oh." The disappointment was palpable. "Well, maybe another time then. Is he around much? It would be so nice for Michael to meet your friends. He travels quite a bit, busy with his various investments and properties." Investments and properties. Wow. He must be quite successful. He's done well for himself. "You know, Thomas, Michael was just saying the other day that we should talk about your living situation. This house is so big for just you. Have you thought about downsizing? We could help you look at condos. And of course, if you needed help with a down payment or anything." And there it was. The real reason for this sudden, renewed interest. "I'm comfortable where I am," I said evenly. "Oh, of course. I just meant, when you do decide to sell, that's a lot of equity. We'd want to make sure you're making the best financial decisions. Michael and I could help manage things for you." Manage things. Right. "Jessica, I appreciate the concern, but I have my finances well in hand." After I hung up, I called Harold and told him about the conversation. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Let me guess. She's figured out I'm wealthy and is wondering how close we are and whether you're in the will." Something like that. "Thomas, I'm going to give you some advice. Document everything. Start writing things down, dates, conversations, everything. People show you who they are. Believe them." I took his advice. Over the next few months, the pattern became clear. Jessica called regularly now, always asking about Harold, always working in subtle questions about my finances. Did I have a will? Did I have a lawyer? Had I thought about the future? Michael started bringing up moving closer to them. "We could help you out, Dad. You're getting older. What if something happens?" I was 68 and in better shape than most men 20 years younger. I ran 5 kilometers 3 times a week and could still lift as much as I did at 40. But to them, I was elderly, presumably declining, and definitely in need of managing. The more they pushed, the clearer Carol and I became about what we wanted. We'd been dating for 6 months when she asked me to move in with her. Her house was smaller than mine, but perfect, a bungalow in Inglewood with a garden and a workshop space in the garage where I could do my woodworking. "I'm not interested in getting married again," she said honestly. "Been there, done that. But I'd like to share a life with you, if you're interested." "I'm very interested. I put my house on the market in September. It sold in 3 days. Calgary's housing market was crazy for significantly more than I'd expected. Nearly $1 million for a house I'd bought for $75,000 in 1982. Michael called, panicked, when he found out. "Dad, you sold the house? Without even telling us?" "I'm moving in with Carol. Didn't need the space anymore." "But what about the money?" "What about it?" "Well, I mean, that's a lot of money. You should invest it carefully. Jessica's brother is a financial advisor." "Michael, I have a financial advisor. Had one for 30 years. The money's handled." "But Dad, is there something you need, son? Are you in financial trouble?" "No, of course not. I just think, we're your family. We should be part of these decisions. You're my family when I'm making financial decisions, but not when I want to spend Christmas with you." Silence. "Dad, that's not fair. That was Jessica's parents." "Michael, I need to go. I have movers coming." I moved into Carol's house in October. Harold helped, along with some volunteers from Meadowbrook. It felt right, living there. Carol and I fell into an easy rhythm. We were both independent enough to give each other space, but enjoyed each other's company enough to want to share most things. The kids came by once, in November. Jessica's eyes cataloged everything: Carol's tasteful furniture, the well-maintained garden, the obvious comfort of the home. You could see her reassessing the situation. "This is lovely," Jessica said to Carol with forced warmth. "You have wonderful taste." "Thank you," Carol replied, polite but not effusive. "Thomas said you run the volunteer program at Meadowbrook?" "I coordinate it. Yes." "That's so nice. It must be very fulfilling." Carol smiled. "It is." Jessica kept probing, trying to find an angle, but Carol was unflappable. She'd dealt with all kinds of people in her work. One social climbing daughter-in-law wasn't going to rattle her. After they left, Carol made tea, and we sat in her back garden, wrapped in blankets against the November chill. She was trying to figure out if I have money, Carol said mildly. Yep. Does it matter to her that we're happy? I don't think that's entered her calculation. Carol was quiet for a moment. You know you need to protect yourself, right? People like that, they don't stop. They escalate. She was right. I called my lawyer the next week and updated my will. I'd always planned to leave everything to Michael the house. My savings, my pension. It was what you did, right? You worked hard and left it to your kids. But the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. Michael had a good job, a nice house, and healthy kids. What he didn't have was perspective or a spine when it came to his wife. And Jessica. Well, Jessica would burn through any inheritance I left, probably upgrading her car and her wardrobe, while never thinking about what those resources could do for people who actually needed them. My lawyer, a woman named Patricia, same name as my late wife, which felt like a sign, listened to what I wanted. Are you sure? She asked. This is going to cause conflict, I'm sure. The holidays rolled around again. This time, we knew what to expect. Michael called in early December. Dad, about Christmas. We're doing our own thing again this year, but we'll definitely see you Boxing Day. That's fine, son. I've made other plans anyway. Oh? He sounded surprised. With Carol? With Carol? With Harold? With Meadowbrook? We're doing the community dinner again. Oh, that's great, Dad. On Christmas Eve, Carol, Harold, and I went to the Meadowbrook Center to finish setting up. Tomorrow would be our second year serving the community Christmas dinner. This year, Harold had convinced 2 other wealthy friends to contribute, and we'd be able to serve nearly 400 people. As we worked, I looked at Carol, directing volunteers, at Harold, joking with the kids who'd come early, at the community we'd built around this simple act of service, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. This was where I belonged. Not sitting in my son's house, tolerated for a few hours, once a year. But here, with people who valued me for what I contributed, not what I could give them. Christmas Day was even better than the year before. We served families, seniors, veterans, anyone who walked through our doors. At one point, I was dishing out mashed potatoes when I looked up and saw Michael standing in the doorway. He looked uncertain, out of place in his expensive winter coat. Dad? I set down the serving spoon. Michael, what are you doing here? Jessica's parents canceled, some kind of flu going around, and I thought. He looked around at the crowded hall, at the volunteers, at the guests enjoying their dinner. I thought maybe I could help. I studied my son. He looked tired, older than his 44 years. Stressed. Sure, I said. Grab an apron. We need someone on the serving line. He worked beside me for 3 hours, serving food, clearing tables, talking to guests. At one point, I caught him laughing with Harold, who was telling some elaborate story about a construction disaster. When things quieted down, Michael found me in the kitchen. Dad, I'm sorry. For what? For all of it. For letting Jessica make decisions about our family. For only seeing you when it was convenient. For treating you like an obligation instead of my father. I dried my hands on a towel. What changed? This, seeing you here, seeing what you've built. You're happier now than I've seen you in years. And I realized, I'm not. Jessica, she's always pushing for more. More money, bigger house, better car. It's never enough. And I've been so focused on keeping her happy that I forgot about what matters. Michael, I'm not leaving her, if that's what you're thinking. She's my wife, and we have kids together. But I need to set some boundaries. Starting with my relationship with you, I'd like that. We hugged, there in that community center kitchen, and something that had been broken between us started to mend. Not fixed healing takes time, but mending. Michael came back on Boxing Day too, bringing Sophie and Ethan. Just them, no Jessica. The kids loved helping out, especially Sophie, who spent most of the afternoon playing with the younger children. Can we come back? Ethan asked as we were packing up. Anytime, Carol told him. We can always use volunteers. That spring, I finalized my will. Michael was provided for. There was a trust fund for the grandkids' education that Jessica couldn't touch, and Michael would receive enough to be comfortable. But the bulk of my estate, the proceeds from my house sale, my savings, my investments was split between Meadowbrook Center and a fund to support retired first responders facing hardship. I didn't tell Michael right away. That conversation could wait. What mattered now was this life Carol and I were building. In March, we planted her garden together, my knees aching as I knelt in the soil, but not caring because her laugh made everything worthwhile. In April, I finished my first woodworking project, a set of shelves for her collection of cookbooks. They were slightly lopsided, but she displayed them proudly. Harold kept threatening to buy that property in the Okanagan, and kept not doing it because, as he admitted one evening over dinner, why would I leave when all my best friends are here? By summer, Michael was coming to volunteer at Meadowbrook regularly. Not every week, but often enough that people knew him. Sophie was interning there for school credit, discovering a passion for community service. Even Ethan came when he wasn't playing hockey. Jessica kept her distance. She was polite when we saw her, but cool. Michael told me she'd been angry when she found out about the will he'd told her after I'd made it clear that was happening. But there wasn't much she could do about it. One evening in August, Carol and I were sitting on her back porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She had her feet up on my lap, and we were talking about nothing in particular. "You happy?" she asked suddenly. I thought about it. About this life I was living, about the community we'd built, about my improved relationship with my son, about this woman beside me who'd shown me that life could start over at any age. "Yeah," I said. "I really am." She smiled and squeezed my hand. "Good. Me too." The thing about getting older is that you realize time isn't infinite. Every day counts. Every choice matters. I'd spent too many years settling for being tolerated when I deserved to be valued. Too many years giving when I should have been receiving too. But now I was exactly where I was supposed to be, with people who saw me, who valued me, who wanted me around not for what I could give them, but for who I was. And honestly, that was worth more than any inheritance. 6 months later, on a crisp December morning, I stood in Meadowbrook's community hall, watching Carol direct volunteers for our 3rd annual Christmas dinner. Harold was arguing good-naturedly with Michael about the best way to arrange the tables. Sophie was showing Ethan how to fold napkins properly. This was my family now. Not instead of my son and grandchildren, but, in addition to them, a chosen family built on mutual respect and shared values. My phone buzzed. A text from Carol. "Stop watching and start helping. Those chairs won't set themselves up." I laughed, pocketed my phone, and got to work. Later, someone would ask me if I had any regrets about how I'd handled things with Jessica, about the will, about choosing this path instead of just enduring things as they were. I'd tell them the truth, not for a single second. Because here's what I'd learned. You can't make someone value you. You can't force your children to see you as anything other than what they've decided you are. But you can decide how you spend your time, who you spend it with, and what kind of life you build. And I'd built a good one. As the first guests started arriving for Christmas dinner, Carol caught my eye across the room. She smiled, and I smiled back. "Yeah, a very good life indeed,"